Welcome to the Catholic Champion Show. I'm your host, John Yep, and my co-host, Michael Hichborn. On today's show, we are talking about the responses of Catholic leaders to the incoming Trump administration, the latest on free speech, the pros and cons, and last but not least, the famous Charlie Kirk, Michael Nolles debate about Catholicism that happened at America Fest. Stay tuned. Welcome to the show. So we got a lot going on. We have President Trump. He's going to be installed in just under 2 weeks. And Michael, you're buried in snow over there in D.C. right now. Is that correct?
Buried is a very relative term. No, we got a little bit of snow, not a whole lot, but it's nice and white, so it's pretty.
Do you own a snowplow, or are you shovel on the ground kind of guy?
My back is telling you exactly what you need to know about how much effort goes into snowing the driveway. So
this is key. Yeah, it's something I actually miss being from Chicago. I miss those blizzards here in Arizona. We do not have that, but we are suffering just west of us. We have the California fire, so that's kind of blowing over a little bit.
I'll take snow over fire any day.
Yeah, the air quality is just horrible at times, and you really notice that. So, but it is what it is. Weather is one thing, but we have the political climate going on right now in the church, as we have obviously President Trump will be taking office at high noon on the 20th of January. Catholics for Catholics will be there in person on the ground, covering with tickets to inauguration, some other events happening in around the Capitol during that time. But, we have the different responses from Catholic leaders. I think just to kind of frame this from what we were seeing from specifically Catholic bishops, going back to a couple weeks ago when our very own friend Brian Birch was named as ambassador to the Vatican by President Trump, named Brian Birch, leader of Catholic Vote. Thoughts on that appointment, Michael?
Oh, I think he's a fantastic pick. I mean, I can't think of anybody better. Of course, the liberals are going absolutely insane over it because they're like, oh, he opposes Pope Francis. Oh, he opposes this and he opposes that. Look, he's a Catholic. He stands for what the Catholic Church teaches. He stands very much in favor of the rights of unborn children to be born. He stands against the encroachment of Marxism within the church and within society. And he stands firmly against the grandstanding immorality of the LGBTQ movement as it is pushing its ideologies down the throats of children. So, kudos to Trump for picking him to be the ambassador to the Vatican. And if the leftists want to get upset about this, well, I'm sorry. You're basically saying, how dare a Catholic be appointed to this position, and how dare he stand up and be Catholic?
Absolutely. We were actually asked on Newsmax a couple weeks ago, what's the deal? Why has Trump picked so many Catholic nominees? Is he have bias towards other religions? And no, I mean, the answer really is they were just the best qualified for that particular job. That's why President Trump chose them. So it's the same case with Brian. Brian I've known for a while now, and honestly, kind of proud to see him take that position. I mean, he's done so much. Catholic Vote's been around for 20 years. And he's done a lot of work really being a presence in the public square like us for Catholicism. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a very difficult job, no doubt, because like it or not, the current pontiff at times has basically kind of been against some key principles of the Trump administration going back in 2016 when they clashed about the border, right? Yep. So we have the news which segues into the kind of what we saw about 5 days ago when the new appointment to Washington, D.C., the new Cardinal Gregory was stepping down because he reached the age of 77, which is the mandatory 75.
He's 2 years overdue.
So wait, how did that actually work? So he didn't actually send in his resignation to 75 like you're supposed to, or what?
He did. And the thing is, so this is the discretion, and this is why there's a lot of consternation about the way Pope Francis handles things. You know, somebody like an Archbishop Corleone, the day that he turns 75 and submits his letter of resignation as he is required by canon law, you can guarantee that the Pope is going to be hovering over his keyboard to hit "I accept" right away.
Right.
But somebody like Cardinal Wilton Gregory, Cardinal Supich is over age currently.
It's like when you send a envelope in the mail, like you've already you paid for the return stamp, so that was already in his inbox, right?
Yeah,
so,
it's already there.
So he waited on this for 2 years.
2 years. Mm-hmm.
Right. I was reading a little bit about what the Pillar wrote. Pillar usually has some pretty good sources for different reasons that are close to the Vatican. So they have kind of an inside at times. And at least they were opining, I think it was Ed Condon's article, that this was due because there was actually conflict. Pope Francis was not in favor of McElroy. He, but this is what they're saying. I mean, you know, he was not as much in favor of him. He wanted somebody else, a little bit less, maybe, at least ostentatiously seen as
radical.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that because it is what it is, but at least didn't give the appearance, you know, prima facie that.
Well, I'll put it this way: Cardinal Wuerl, years ago, opposed the elevation of McElroy to being a cardinal. And he opposed it. Yeah. This was mostly stuff behind the scenes, but you know, the reason he opposed it is because Cardinal Wilton Gregory, for as diabolically liberal as he is the kind of political animal that says we don't come right out and say what we think, and we don't beat people over the head with our beliefs. We try to skirt the issue, we try to convince people, and we push our agenda without taking the other side into consideration. That's the Cardinal Wuerl approach. The Cardinal McElroy approach is to drive the rainbow-colored bulldozer through Catholic doctrine and run over as many Catholic houses as he possibly can. That's the two kinds of personalities that we're dealing with. And so when it comes to this kind of thing, maybe Pope Francis was looking for somebody a little more subtle, kind of like Cardinal Wuerl was looking for. But that begs the question, why would you go ahead and elevate him then? And then why would you go ahead and put him in the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C.? So I think there's a disconnect between what he says, or maybe what he says he wants, and what he does. And it's a consistent pattern with him.
So is it that, or is it what the article opines? Ed, pretty good source, says it was actually Pope Francis was opposed to McElroy all the way up till October, essentially. And then things were changing. And then when it was Brian Birch was named as the ambassador, Cardinal Supich, who was pushing McElroy, again, McElroy is a son of McCarrick, meaning he says that McCarrick is the one who got him to be a bishop, right?
Yep.
When Trump named Brian Birch, that was seen as kind of a, I guess, if you can use the term active war, or a little bit of an aggressive action towards the Vatican. So the Vatican had to respond in kind and place someone of you know, that caliber back to balance out the Birch choice. Who knows? You know,
I don't think that that's accurate. I mean, maybe that was the thinking behind it, but it's kind of a dumb thinking, simply because McElroy is in Washington, D.C. Brian Birch is going to be in Rome. The two of them are never, ever going to collaborate or meet. Now, McElroy might be, he might be having conversations with people on Capitol Hill, and maybe he's going to have conversations with Donald Trump himself. However, I seriously doubt it. He has no influence. When was the last time that a cardinal of the Catholic Church had any real influence in Washington, D.C.?
That's a good question. I'd probably go back to Cardinal Gibbons.
I would say so.
1890s. You know, any, you know, on the subject of cardinals, I mean, you look at the role Cardinal Dolan has played too, even being, you know, we don't always agree with Cardinal Dolan, but what has been done a great job with the El Smith dinner. He will be leading the prayer at the inauguration, and someone President Trump least has a cordial relationship with, right? So, yeah, it's almost like you could compare it there. Now, but it does go into the whole, because the dealings with the executive branch is one thing, as Cardinal DC, but the reason that the USCCB is based in Washington, as Dr. Mannion would always tell me, is because it was to make it a lobbying institution. A large part why it's in DC, right? So, the relationship with the legislative branch, the Congress, from which they get their funding, 45% of their budget, is kind of a key thing. So Cardinal McElroy's role in fostering those relations, that could be, pretty key, right? But who knows? I mean, again, like normally on the show, we don't typically go so much into the church, like, inside politics, whatever. There's other outlets do a much better job at that. But insofar as they pertain to political decisions and how they influence what everyday Americans are deciding, which they do, it's important people to know the Catholic players behind this, right?
Sure.
I got a reference too. Last thing about Cardinal McElroy, he said some things that are pretty off the wall. His whole push to say that, what was it back in, that abortion's not the preeminent issue?
Oh, yeah.
Like a direct quote. What was a direct quote he said? Do you remember that from the USCCB?
I don't remember what the quote was, but he was arguing against the preeminence of abortion being the issue that the USCCB needs to address.
Yeah, it's like it is not a Catholic thing to say that abortion is not the preeminent issue. That's almost a word for word of what he said in front of the bishops' conference, which was on live television. Which, and he was trying to compare climate change at the same level, right? Yeah. So very questionable past, but even more so. And I just throw this out, and we can move on. The reporting that our mutual friend Christine Niles did through a video, it's called "The Devil in Rome," where she laid out an excellent case. I mean, we've got to put it out there. If we want to restore, and this will come up again at the last point of our show when we talk about the Kirk-Michael Knowles debate about Catholicism. I think the key for us of having credibility and for being able to really evangelize effectively is, I think it's like what I call the 80-20 rule. Michael, maybe you disagree with this, and please love your opinion. The 80-20 rule is 80% we should be talking about the amazing positive things that are happening in the church, right? We have the Eucharist. We have the Blessed Mother. We have the saints. We have the fact that, Father Mark Mary, his Rosary podcast in a year, just topped Joe Rogan's show. Okay. Crazy. Amazing. That's positive. But the 20% is you can't ignore the negative that's going on in the church. Because if you do, the non-Catholics, they laugh at us and they take further distance from us because they don't think that we're being intellectually honest. And going to that point, the Cardinal McElroy, you can watch the show if you really have the stomach for it. But essentially, there was a priest who satanically sexually abused a woman, right? And the dates really add up where Bishop McElroy back in San Diego was aware of that decision. It happened before he became bishop in 2014. He becomes bishop in 2015. Obviously, he's privy to that knowledge. He sent Father Bertrand, now laicized, to get a few months of healing, send him back to a parish. And lo and behold, what do you know? He continued to abuse more women, right? And he stonewalled. And even when there's a criminal investigation, he did not hand over the report to the outside public. Okay. So that's the guy, son of McCarrick, figuratively.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he's a cover-up artist. That's what he does.
Cover-up artist. Not protected us as a shepherd. So that's a reality. And I think it's we got to talk about that. So is that the man that, we want to be guarding the sheep spiritually? If he can't even physically protect his flock back going to San Diego? I think not.
Well, I've done a lot of investigation into Cardinal McElroy back when he was bishop, and even when he was a Monsignor, I was looking into his background before he was elevated. And I can tell you that there was a consistent pattern of attacking church teaching going way back. Cardinal McElroy is also very, very close with the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests, which is an organization I've been personally investigating for the last 10 years. And He has been to their annual assembly a number of times. He pushes, false teachings while he's at these assembly meetings. And
quick recap for people. What is the Association of Catholic Priests?
The Association of U.S. Catholic Priests claims to be the largest association of priests in the United States. And they push women's ordination. They push the LGBTQ agenda. They are looking for they're basically call to action, reshaped. They're the last vestiges of call to action, I would say. I mean, you look at the room and there isn't a soul under 80 in that room. So
it's white hair and lack of black clothing, because they don't typically dress in black, in
lots of rainbows,
clerical attire,
and lots of rainbows.
So he's a frequent guest there. He speaks there and he promotes his stuff there, right? So
that's right.
So I hate to use the term, but by all references, he's very liberal, not really Catholic on so many issues, right? And that is concerning. But also, Mike, you've done a lot of work too in your research with Lepanto about government grants through Catholic charities. And I probably don't know this off the top of your head, but how much money that San Diego diocese has taken in through Catholic charities with the refunding. I mean, it is substantial. It is definitely substantial.
San Diego is a sanctuary city, so of course they're pulling all kinds of money.
There you go. Ben Bergquam, excellent reporting. Is just San Diego is one of the worst places that in terms of illegal immigrants, right? And he was overseeing that, right? So illegal immigration again brings with it all the fentanyl deaths, all the human trafficking. So, and it would make sense that the title of CNA's article talking about this with the press conference day one of Cardinal McElroy is, quote, mass deportations incompatible with Catholic doctrine, Cardinal McElroy says. I mean, he does make the case that, it's Catholic, to defend your borders, but
yeah.
So
here's what he actually said. He said the Catholic Church teaches that a country that has a right to control its borders and its nation's desire to do so is a legitimate effort. Okay, fine. That's true. He actually said something true. So he was establishing that as, a baseline, but then he goes on to say, at the same time, we are called always to have a sense of the dignity of every human person. So you got to go full stop here, because each line of what he says is extremely weighted. There are a lot of things going on in each statement. First of all, when he says we are called always to have a sense of dignity, who's we? Who's he talking about? He's talking about the lawmakers. He's talking about citizens. Is he talking about police officers or judges? Who is he talking about? He doesn't really specify. He just says, well, we have to have this. Well, fine, but where are you going with this? Right. But more to the point, what does the sense of the dignity of every human person have to do with the issue at hand? If you break the law, you're subject to the consequences of the law. This has nothing to do with human dignity and everything to do with the punishments for crimes. Or is Cardinal McElroy somehow suggesting that punishments for crimes are unjust because all punishments somehow attack the dignity of human persons? So this is, even that one sentence carries with it a lot of implications. There's a lot going on, and you have to kind of break it down. So there's a huge question there. But this is the layup for the second part of what he said. He said, and thus, plans which have been talked about at some levels of having a wider, indiscriminate, massive deportation across the country would be something that would be incompatible with Catholic doctrine. So again, we have to break this down. Indiscriminate, massive deportation. This was never part of the plan. That is not what Donald Trump has been talking about. That's not what his cabinet picks have been talking about. The discrimination, or rather it's a discretion, would begin with those who have entered this country illegally. So we're not talking about indiscriminate deportation. You're talking about discriminate deportation. You're looking for people who entered illegally. They come in by circumventing authentic ports of entry. They failed to provide any form of identification. They bypassed all registrations, and they avoided any sort of background or criminal check that would ensure that they are not wanted fugitives. They're not drug or sex traffickers or part of any kind of cartel. So they've bypassed all of that, which means now we're looking for something even more specific. Who are we looking for? So the first thing that's going to take place is the discriminate investigation of those who have come here illegally. They will be sent back to their country of origin, and from there, they will be given the ability to seek entry into the United States the proper way. They'll be investigated, registered, and approved or denied based upon the legality or the legally established criteria for those who are allowed to be here. So this is not indiscriminate deportation.
Yeah.
So first he establishes the straw man by claiming something that was not taking place and is never going to take place in the first place. Secondly, he asserts that indiscriminate massive deportation across the country is incompatible with Catholic doctrine. Now, this is false in two ways. In the first and more obvious way, he asserts that there is a Catholic doctrine regarding deportation. There is no such doctrine. There's just, there's no Catholic doctrine on police procedures, jail sentences, fines for penal crimes. There's no doctrine. So there's no doctrine regarding deportation. Why? Because deportation is a punishment for a crime. That's simply all it is. There are moral standards, and with those moral standards, we can determine how people are to be treated and the dignity that is owed to all human beings.
Right.
But this can in no way be extended to a doctrinal matter when it comes to the justified act of deporting someone who is here illegally. Now, in the second way, Cardinal McElroy is asserting that the assumed doctrine regarding deportation is to be applied to an assumed plan of the Trump administration that has never been established as some kind of indiscriminate deportation of people, as though human beings will be plucked from their homes at random and sent packing. This kind of sophistry is extremely dishonest. So this is the problem of everything that he said. And he said just a very small amount on this, but that's the problem. It's a snowball effect.
It's a snowball effect, and you're going to see this. We're kind of talking about already, nipping in the bud, trying to anyways. There is going to be concerted effort. It's going to ramp up, especially after January 20th, by all sorts of left-leaning leaders, a lot of them religious, to thwart this plan. And well, Michael, you laid that out fantastically, right? That, to try to cozy up the Catholic doctrine, saying that mass deportations are just not Catholic. That's non sequitur, right? So but they're going to play that language, and
right.
You kind of nipped it in the bud intellectually right there, but it's also, I think you got to look beyond. It's just not coherent with everything else that they've done, with not speaking about the illegal immigration in his own diocese, which is so rampant and just hurt that city so much, right? Or even going back to the Father Bertrand case. So you're telling me you're so concerned about the American citizen or about the illegal immigrant, but
here's my question. Let me just jump in here, because, Cardinal McElroy actually locked the doors of one of his churches to prevent people from going in and saying the rosary before Mass.
What?
Just think about that for just a second. Oh, yeah.
Is that the St. John's Parish one? St. John's Evangelist?
It's the one where Aaron Bianco was, I believe.
Yeah, well, was that McElroy, or was that the Father Dolan, who is now Bishop John Dolan of our Diocese of Phoenix?
Yep.
So they locked the doors.
Yeah. So they locked the doors leading up to the very moment that Mass would start, so that people could not go in and pray the rosary prior to the Mass. So, this is the kind of incoherence of their argumentation. They're going to lock the doors of the church to prevent people from going in to do something that they don't want them to do. But then they're going to tell people, you need to unlock the gates of the country and let people come in to do things you don't want them to do.
Right.
It's incoherent.
It's incoherent. We got to see through. We have to push through this. This is not hatred for even the illegal immigrant that's coming in. We don't hate people, but constantly we have to think about those poor people in this country who are trying to make a living, right? And some of them have come in illegally and been waiting for their legal status, and then they just see these people next door that come in, get a social security number, get free check from the government. It's not right. It's not fair, right? And even in the poorer communities, like here in Phoenix, I know this. You have a lot of these communities that are just disrupted because the gang violence has just gone up through the roof. Or look at Aurora, Colorado, where Tom Homan has said he's going to start. I mean, they've literally gone into the apartment complexes and just taken them over. It's love for those people. That's not right. We have to restore justice. Deportations of specifically the illegal or the criminals, it's an act of justice towards the American citizen.
Yep. And, once again, looking back to 2020, you can see Cardinal, he was bishop then, Bishop McElroy closed the parishes. He closed the parishes. He closed the schools. He said, we're canceling mass. We're canceling this. We're canceling that. So you couldn't get into the church.
Yep.
And why? Because there's the possible spread of an illness. Okay.
Back in the scandemic days, right? So,
So in terms of the common good, and it was all argued in sense of the common good, but we have to remember that in the United States, in any country, the common good of the people is protected by the leaders that are either elected or appointed or, by right of succession. But the leaders have an obligation to maintain and to preserve the common good of the people. And that also includes closing the borders if there is a time of pandemic. Now, what did they do? Cardinal McElroy, back in the day, I believe, was one of the signatories on a letter that went out, public letter regarding Donald Trump, saying we're not going to allow certain nations to come into this country for certain reasons regarding the common good. So, they say out of one hand that we're for the common good and we want to make sure everybody has this equitable approach and everything else. But then out of the common good, they're going to use their discretion to close their churches, to close their doors, to close their ecclesiastical borders, as it were, for the common good. But then when it comes to, allowing people to come in to do what needs to be done, like pray the rosary, they're also going to close the doors and make sure that people can't. So it's a totalitarian attitude, and it's an authoritarian attitude that starts and ends with them as if they believe that they should be the ones legislating and leading. And it's if we ever wanted to say that there was a problem of clericalism in this church, this is it. That's the very essence of it.
Right. Absolutely. It's going into a little bit kind of a subset of this point about some of the church leaders voicing their opposition to President Trump. You had that. I'm just going to briefly reference it because it's so crazy. Archbishop Gustavo Siller,
who quit X today, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
He did?
Yeah. Suddenly his X account is deleted. It's gone.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, perhaps this might be the reason why. Now, I mean, Archbishop I'm not super expert on some of the past confrontations he's had with some more traditional Catholics in his diocese. But I know there is a history there. I'm not going to take necessarily sides. I don't know the facts, but I do know that on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, he had a series of tweets where he came out and basically linked President Trump to the New Orleans shooting and said that it was his hatred. He's incited this hatred across America and caused this. I mean, the tweets, the X posts were so off the wall.
Yep.
I don't know if we can throw the response on there, but we kind of just published a gentle response. We always try to be so respectful. I mean, of the office of these bishops, they are successors of the apostles, right? But we basically said, hey, we beg you, Archbishop, to quickly recant what you said, linking Donald Trump's words to the tragedy in New Orleans. Your words have caused great scandal. President-elect Trump is in no way responsible for this terrorist attack. Last November, while many clerics remained silent as atheistic communism was attempting to take control, we, the Catholic people, voted overwhelmingly, 58 to 40%, in support of Trump in a historic landslide. We saw through the lies that the man they tried to kill twice was not a man fomenting hate, as you infer, dear Archbishop, but someone who loves America and is willing to die for her. Donald Trump is committed from day one to help all Americans. That's true, even his enemies, people that hate him. He has chosen an unprecedented number of qualified Catholics to serve in his new administration, including J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Tom Homan, and many others. We pray especially that you will work with him to stop the flow of illegal immigration happening in your archdiocese with the accompanying human trafficking and death costs from drugs like fentanyl. On this feast of the holy name of Jesus, may our country and its leaders, both civic and religious, rededicate ourselves to him, source of all goodness and truth. God bless you. That was, we sent the responses, try to be very polite, but we got very firm though too, because this is not cool. That post got almost 1 million views. Okay.
Wow.
So maybe that had a role. So maybe he's going through something because there were so many grammatical errors. I mean, what do you think about that, Michael? I mean, that post is crazy.
Oh, it was absolutely bonkers. And, I took him to task a little bit too. And I commented on his post. I retweeted something that I commented on. And, the one, I can't even remember what it was that he said, but he deleted that tweet a day or two ago. And then today he deleted his X account. So, but he was completely unhinged. And it was clear that he either was just, he had lost it. He meant like mentally and emotionally, like he was having some kind of a breakdown or mental event, or maybe he was intoxicated. But whatever he was doing was not rational, and he was not speaking rationally. He was not thinking rationally. He just kind of mentally vomited all over X. And I think that's the reason why he deleted his X account, because he was embarrassed.
One former Trump administration official, when we sent this person the post from Archbishop, had a very interesting insight. He said, all the spelling grammatical issues, that's odd. Are you sure that this is the account? We do research. Yeah, this is the account. And his observation was, when you do that many errors in spelling, all that grammar's off, usually it's coming from you're not precise in your attack, and it's coming from a place of hate rather than love, which is much more measured and thought out and rational, right? So who knows what's going on with Archbishop? If he's going through something personally, we pray for him. But if you're the leader of an archdiocese, you're an archbishop, and you're saying something about the most famous person in the world, who, by the way, has had 2 assassination attempts in 6 months. Okay. We got to speak up and defend this guy. Right. So anyways.
Yep. No, as I said on X, when I reposted the fact that he had deleted his account, I said, for the good of his soul and the souls who swallow his poison, it is a great thing that he has left social media. And I think that's the best thing what we can say.
Well said. Well, speaking of social media, okay, the fact that any of us get to post that kind of stuff, both his and our response is because we have free speech, or a semblance of free speech in this country. Part of the American dream, right? So that's been under attack. We've had some wins this past year, but most recently you saw that Mark Zuckerberg, our dear Facebook founder, it was the title of the article, Judiciary Jim Jordan from Politico told reporters that he's meeting with Mark Zuckerberg in the next few weeks as the Meta CEO plans an upcoming visit to D.C. Meta announced on Tuesday that it would be getting rid of its fact-checking program, which Republicans have criticized as the way the parent company of Facebook and Instagram has suppressed conservative speech. Jordan said Tuesday he was hopeful that Zuckerberg would now be an ally in his crusade against censorship on social media platforms. Okay. Thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of amazing that Zuckerberg is doing effectively a 360, and it seems pretty clear that something has changed. I don't think Zuckerberg himself has changed. He's certainly just as liberal as he's always been. But I think he stuck his finger in the political air and said, it's not politic for me to censor things anymore. And maybe he's not getting the same kickbacks he was getting before for enacting the same kind of censorship. So, I mean, we know, and we've known for a long time, that Facebook, it was a project of the CIA. There was CIA involvement in it from the very inception, and it's been kind of an instrument of the CIA ever since. So I don't think that it's, yeah, go ahead.
Building that point out, you're dead on with that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Again, it was House Judiciary that really exposed in the past 2 years how they were compelled, they were working with government agencies, okay, which probably the CIA or whoever it is, one of those government, to do the bidding of the government, right? So do continue, yeah.
So on the one sense, it's that finger in the air going, okay, which way is the wind blowing? But in the other sense, it's almost like an attempt to say, hey, I'm your friend. You don't need to investigate me. You don't need to look into my stuff. And in fact, you don't need to be worried about what the FBI and what the CIA and what the NSA, what their relationship with us has been. You don't need to look at their emails. You don't need to look at their documents and our communications with each other. It's not an issue anymore because we fixed it. So it seems to me that this is a bit of deflection, that there is an attempt to get the heat off of Facebook so that the people aren't putting the pressure to investigate it anymore, to investigate the people that were involved in the censorship programs. So there's a little bit of a political move here. This is a calculated move, and I'm hoping it doesn't work, because the fact of the matter is, he even put Dana White on the board. Dana White from the Ultimate Fighting Championship, you put him on the board. So it's like, okay. First of all, he's one board member out of how many?
Exactly.
It's you're not going to get the oversight. You're not going to get the information. But as far as I can tell, this is a bit of deflection.
Exactly. Sorry, not buying it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the tech, CEOs that made the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago in the past few weeks and wrote their $1 million checks. Apple, Facebook, a couple others, I think Salesforce.
They're paying tribute.
Yeah, paying tribute. I mean, $1 million, guys, nothing, okay? Specifically when you know that Trump administration is going to help your companies to get millions more, right, by his policies. So not buying it. Absolutely not buying it at all. That this is a conversion of the heart, right? It's also a business decision, right? Facebook and Instagram, specifically Facebook, has been losing business like crazy the past 8 years. It's like practically irrelevant. It's among most of the younger generation, right? So they had to do something. They're adjusting their things, and if it can change this quickly now because of an election, it can change like that again. Okay, so you could have everyone run back to Facebook and build up their followings and like that. And then you have like 83 million followers like Trump had on X. And then boom, January 7th, he lost of 2021. He lost it. Right. So easy come, easy go. Right. You just have to know. But I think it's important to remember that as Candace Owens had a great interview with, did you see that, Michael, that former CIA officer
that got I haven't seen her interview.
6 million views, a whistleblower from the CIA, where this is in the past like month, where he basically kind of walks us through again how most of the major media companies in this country have working relationships with government intel. I mean, they're literally fed, specifically the CIA, specifically told what to say, right? And the moment that they go against, they say something negative against the CIA, they're toast, right? So obviously they've been doing this for 56 years with the traditional media sources. Of course they're going to be in social media, right? Which is the new media. So not buying this. But anyway, what about Elon Musk? What's the deal there? You have Steve Bannon in Newsweek issues new Elon Musk warning. This is Steve Bannon title, Masters in Beijing. He's got Masters in Beijing. What's this all about? Prominent right-wing podcaster Steve Bannon took aim at billionaire Elon Musk, saying the world's wealthiest man has Masters in Beijing during a Saturday episode on the War Room. Bannon served, you know who Bannon is, right?
Oh, yeah.
For the audiences, okay. But so Musk, who donated over $250 million to help get the president-elect across the finish line in 2024. $250 million, people. Incredible how much he donated to get Trump across the line, specifically in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Bannon has been critical of Musk, specifically for his business ties to China, right? Bannon discussed how Musk had said he will change algorithm on X to reduce, quote, negativity. Musk purchased X and is running. All right, we know that, right? So what is this all about? Recent X update says that Musk aims to tweak the algorithm to penalize negativity while promoting content that is informational and entertaining. Musk goals to enhance user experience by increasing what he refers to as unregretted user seconds. What do you think about that?
How are you going to define negativity? I mean, Elon is one of the biggest trolls on X. You know, he likes to post memes. Memes can be a meme can be negative. It's often is, you know, it's you're trolling somebody, you're putting out a negative thought or a negative message. I mean, are we talking like get with good vibes, man? I mean, what are we talking about here?
He's saying more specifically, like, look, just a reminder, the algorithm, this is from a post from the 26th. A reminder, the algorithm is trying to maximize unregretted user seconds.
What does that mean?
If far more credible verified subscriber accounts, so not bots, mute or block your account compared to those who like your post, your reach will decline significantly. But this on the tails of people like who I don't agree with, Nick Fuentes, a far-right white supremacist who lost his X verification, wrote a platform, Twitter censorship is back. So basically a number of users had their blue checks removed, including Lara Logan as well, and others. So by Elon, this kind of blew up over the battle over H-1B visas, which Elon was very much in favor of. And, you know, that's kind of what also prompted Bannon to speak up and other people criticizing Musk for that. Trump ultimately decided with H-1B1 visas, but people like Bannon were making the point, whether you agree with it or not, that Elon's he was so much in favor of that because a lot of his workers were from overseas and they were cheaper and it was helping his company. So he was in favor of bringing those over. People who criticized H-1B1 on X were basically suppressed. So what do we do, Michael?
Well, so with X, I don't know what the answer is because quite honestly, I don't understand what his criteria is. It's a very nebulous, very subjective criteria that he's established: negativity and you know, precious viewer seconds. I mean, what are we talking about? Are you talking about people coming away with a very happy disposition when they go on X and everybody's just happy? And well, how do you measure that? How do you determine what makes somebody happy and what doesn't? I mean, I might find it funny to watch somebody kicking puppies down the street, but are you going to say that that's a negative thing? I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that it isn't. If you want to put it on moral lines, that's another thing. But it's such a subjective statement that it's impossible to understand how you're going to tailor your messages on social media to maintain a positive outlook, because sometimes when you report the news, it's just awful. You know, somebody died, a country got invaded, or you know, these terrible things happen to people. Somebody was kicking a puppy down the street. Every single thing that you report has some element of either something that's positive, something that's negative, and it doesn't tell us how the message is going to be tailored, how it's going to be met, how it's going to be received, or how it's going to be measured by an AI bot. I don't understand what he's talking about in this in a real world sense here.
It's difficult. Being the CEO of a social media company which is probably what the largest in the world, is by no means an easy job. And there are some times where you're going to have to, right, limit what can be said there. If someone's like actively trying to kill somebody, right, you have to respond. I mean, Elon was very cooperative with the Las Vegas police over the last attack, and the police actually thanked him for his help because he used his platform to really help them. So you got that, but same time, I think we have to just continue to watch with prudence, look, and ultimately pray for Elon, because he's not really a Christian, right? And you know, if you don't have the best thing in the world, this is cliche, is to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, right? So that's going to guide your actions so much, right? So we got to pray that he finds the Lord, because when you don't have that basis, you're always going to have a second guess about this person. I mean, yes, he's the richest person in the world. He greatly helped President Trump. He helped save America, right? He speaks out incredible issues. Just look what he's doing right now with bringing to light the raping of all those English girls, right? Which has been around for 10 years, but we've forgotten about it, right? So that's what I say there. So let's just keep praying. I mean, we need free speech in this country. It's part of the American ethos, and it's done a lot of good.
Yep. No, I mean, I like what X has done. I just don't understand what this new algorithm is.
It'll be fun. Okay, so going on to our last point, we have basically, I'm going to show you the opening clip in a second here, but America Fest, the big gathering of conservatives every December put on by Turning Point USA. Roughly 16,000 kids, mostly kids, get there. What's that?
Where was it?
It's always in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
So every year, same time, same place, same entity, Turning Point USA. This was a lot more triumphant given the fact that we just won the election, and President-elect Donald Trump showed up there. He's a keynote speaker. Catholics for Catholics, as you know, was a partner with Turning Point during the election, specifically with our ballot chasing operations in 7 swing states. So they gave us a great, we were honored to have a breakout session with them. And of course, we talked about just obviously what we did, but just our plans for the future going into the next couple of years of how we're going to be a Catholic presence and support in the public square. Why I get there, we culminated with benediction. Yes, we had adoration at America Fest. The Eucharist was in the same room where Donald Trump was, right? And it was powerful. You can watch the whole event online. Rob Schneider was our main speaker, and we were crashed by the Bosobic brothers and Matt Fradd. Actually, got to meet Matt Fradd for the first time. He came up and spoke. But anyway, the reason I'm reminding you about that was because one of our attendees at that breakout, shortly thereafter, was ventured over to where he saw Michael Knowles, a good friend of our program, and Charlie Kirk were having a open panel taking questions from the crowds. And this gentleman asked the following question. Play the clip.
Okay, question over here.
So my question to you, because you're such an inspiration to Catholicism, Mr. Knowles, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to spread the love of the Eucharist to the world?
Okay, well, you know, that's wonderful that you're going to do that. I think it's great. Most of the time people say, Michael, I want to start a podcast. What's your advice? And my advice is don't, because too many people have them. And I think every white man under the age of 75 has one now, and it's by law or something. So, but this is the first time in memory that someone has proposed some new content project where I've thought, great, you should do that. That's really good. And my advice is you should recite the St. Thomas Aquinas prayer that he would have before study or writing or speaking for God to illumine his darkened mind. And then what you should do is, pray a little bit more. Praying is the first resort, not the last resort. And then, this is something, Charlie, that we mackerel snappers, we get. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every year. We got 2,000 years of people who are much smarter than you and I, who have thought this out, who have debated these questions. So if you just bring that, if you convey that, I'm trying to sell Charlie on this right now. I know I'm answering you, but I'm really speaking to Charlie. If you just do that, that's all you're doing. You're just telling the story. You're telling the greatest story ever told, and you have the deposit of faith, and you have the magisterium behind you as a hermeneutic of interpretation. But just do that, and do that in sincerity, and do that with the best of your effort, and I think it'll be wonderful.
Keep going, Charles. You got to put the last next 30 seconds on there, because this is where it gets good.
As an evangelical who loves Catholics, I love that you're doing it. But let me just edit what
Here's
you say.
the but. Here's the
no,
but.
No, it's a big one. You didn't catch it, Michael. Yeah. Is that your goal should be to bring people to Jesus, not Catholicism?
Oh, hold on.
No.
What's the difference? I don't think. Hold on.
So okay, boom. That was like pulling the pin on a grenade, man. And I thought it was a fantastic discussion. I'm so glad that it happened, right? Both men are great individuals, and we've lost the ability to converse, specifically about faith, by the way, right? Because we live in a world where all religions are the same. Everyone's good, and all religions lead to God, and blah, blah, blah.
All religions are a path to God, right?
Hashtag Abu Dhabi document, Papa Francesco. Right? So that individual is talking. I'd love to know who that guy was, by the way, track him down, but I'm almost for sure that he had to have been at our session, because the Eucharist was on his mind, which was the point of why we did our breakout, obviously to influence the political arena. But the best way to do that is to have a relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So Father Dennis Mary Dugan, who brought the Eucharist, thanks be to God, put it in all of our minds about what we should be talking about, right? Hello. And that debate ensued, right? So, okay. Thoughts on the debate? There's a lot of really good points in there.
There was a lot to it, but just the first starting point. Okay, so Charlie Kirk's, his little dig of the knife there at the very beginning was, well, we need to bring souls to Christ and not to the Catholic Church.
Well, who fired the first shot, though? Was that a Charlie, or was that Michael Knowles saying, "I'm really talking to you, Charlie"? I mean, you could kind of say that was a little. It was
the side. I thought Michael Knowles was a little bit more subtle to an extent. He wasn't saying, I'm going to make you Catholic. He was just saying, look, I'm explaining something to you, in a way that I think you'll understand that I would like to see you become Catholic. So, that's fine. But it was Charlie Kirk that really just kind of dug the dagger in there for a second. He was like, no, we need to bring souls to Christ and not the Catholic Church, as if he was juxtaposing the two against each other. And so the problem that he starts with is he in a way, he pits the Catholic Church against Christ, instead of establishing that within the Catholic Church, we have the Eucharistic Lord. And so when we bring souls to the Catholic Church, we are bringing souls to Christ, because this is where he is. It's the tabernacle. You have our Lord in the tabernacle. There he is every single day, all day long, all night long. He is here.
The specific quote that Charlie said was, our focus should be to bring people to Christ and not the Catholic faith per se, right? Which, so, and he kind of clarified later, we shouldn't be trying to, bring people just to all the dogmas of the church or the Catholic faith. We should be bringing people to Christ. But like you said, there's no opposition.
Now, I will say that as I watched the interview, there are certain points. Now, Michael Knowles likes to tell a story, so he kind of meanders a little bit as he's talking. And I think that was to his detriment this time around, because he needed to be a little bit more punchy like Charlie was. Charlie was punchy. He had some great one-liners. He had some great zingers, and it was difficult to grasp what Michael Knowles was trying to say. But where he went wrong was trying to explain the doctrines, as opposed to doing what Fulton Sheen said and saying, nobody loves a doctrine. Nobody loves a doctrine. You can't be in love with a doctrine, because a doctrine is not a person. You love truth. You love the church because the church is a person. Okay. She is the bride of Christ. She is a true person. And if you see the church as a person who is inviolate, who does not change, who is beautiful, who is radiant, and who is loving, and who loves us actively, well, then you see the church in her proper role as a mother, which is why we refer to Holy Mother Church. She is a person, and she truly loves us, and she loves Christ. And she is, in a sense, the collection of her teachings, but also her sacraments, and also the graces, and also the love of Christ. All of these things she is, and she presents them to us as a loving mother and provides them to us as a mother nourishes her children. And this is the way the conversation should have gone, but it didn't, because they were kind of, Michael was kind of hung up on, well, the church teaches this, the church teaches that, and he's very dogmatic. And I think it's a good thing, but in that venue, it was the wrong approach. He should have talked about her as a person, because you can't attack the church's teachings without attacking the person of the church. And therefore, it makes it more difficult for Charlie to make those digs.
It's Charlie summarized basically his points that he has against the, that disagree with the Catholic Church on. They're three.
Mm-hmm.
It's Mary, transubstantiation, the Eucharist, and the Pope. He said those are my three B's, right? Yep. I wonder if we could pull up the clip just about some of at least for a little bit, about the comments he made specifically about the Pope at towards the end of the conversation. Mm-hmm. He had some good, good lines back.
Mm-hmm.
Very good critique. And I think Michael got in a very awkward position at that time when he was, I think, trying to defend Pope Francis. Because, again, this is important, by the way, for Catholic Inc. If you saw this debate, who typically are like, okay, we never want to talk of anything bad about Pope Francis, and everything is wonderful, everything is great, and let's just quiet. I mean, you can do that in your world, but in the rest of America, kind of represented in this case by Charlie, who's, one of the top influencers in the country. It's got almost 100 million different social media impressions per month that this guy has. They're looking at this and they're like, okay, this guy literally says this guy is a Marxist. Okay. Yep. This guy is, blessed homosexual marriages back in December. Okay. And how can you tell me that I'm supposed to be part of that church? So, I mean, he made some stuff. So Nolles got in a position where he was like trying to defend Pope Francis' prudential actions, I guess. Right. And that's tricky. Very tricky at the least. Do you have the clip, if you can find it, Charles, where he talks specifically about not no worries? He said, okay, Charlie's like, okay, great. So Michael, you are saying that we only have to believe in the Pope as far as his doctrine of ex cathedra statements, right? So he proceeds to ask Michael, when was the last time that the Pope made an ex cathedra statement in the chair? Michael says, well, I think it was like 1860. It was actually at least officially 1950 with the dogma of the Assumption. But so Charlie's like, wait, all right, go ahead and play that. I don't want to spoil it. Go for it.
However, I don't want to get too deep in this. I actually think the world is a better place because of faithful Catholics. I've spoken out with great criticism of how evangelicals remained quiet here in Arizona on Prop 139, while the Catholic diocese was so courageous on the fight for life, while evangelicals were silent.
Wait, pause. I'm stopping it there. I just got to say, Charlie saw how strong the Catholic bishops were in Arizona. Not doing a victory lap here, but Arizona Right to Life and was Catholic for Catholics that really pushed, encouraged, gently Archbishop to take a stand, because they weren't really taking a stand on Prop 139. Right. So that's all of you, because all of you wrote letters to the bishops. They were respectful letters begging our excellencies to speak up. And 3 days after we started their campaign with emails going to their inboxes, boom, the video came out with all of them speaking up. So thank you, bishops, for speaking up. Thank you, people of Catholics for Catholics and Arizona Right to Life, for ultimately setting a good example for non-Catholics like Charlie Kirk, who noticed that. Keep going.
I want a better Catholic Church, and I personally would not be able to be part of an institution with the figurehead, with a worldview that is so corrupted and opposite of what I think the Bible teaches. And I wouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd be like, no, I'm actually not part of this. I'm leaving.
But today you're part of the United States, but the head of the United States is
yeah,
one
but
of the
I
worst
don't.
presidents we
Again,
ever had.
I don't think
But you don't leave the country.
I don't take.
That's your country.
I don't take religious orders from Joe Biden.
No, but you take political orders, or you at least follow
Not
the law.
really. I mean, I follow the law, but I certainly don't political orders from Joe Biden.
No, I guess it would mean
like we all rebel against corrupt institutions we don't like.
But an unjust law is no law at all. It's not. It's a species
okay, an
of
unjust
violence rather
pope
than
is
law.
not a pope.
Yeah, but what's on? There's nothing unjust about the Pope talking about like climate change.
No,
you just don't pay attention to it. You know.
Wait, cut.
Okay, so you
pause,
just
pause right
you
there.
pick a
Michael, okay, answer that. So Charlie's making the point like, look, Pope Francis makes some crazy statements. So I'm not going to follow that. I'm not going to follow that church. What would you say?
Well, first of all, Michael Knowles was right when he said you just ignore it. I mean, if Pope Francis talking about climate change is akin to Pope Francis talking about the weather. If he's going to sit there and say, well, tomorrow it's going to snow, it doesn't mean it's going to snow. Just as if he says tomorrow the world is doomed because we have too many whatever in the air, CFCs in the air, well, then you can treat that the same way you would any prognostication regarding the weather. It's not something that is within his authority or his purview to discuss. So Michael Knowles was right in this respect, but the problem is Charlie he's doubling down and he's rapid fire. So it's a series of whataboutisms, and it's, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then he ultimately says, well, when was the last time that you had a doctrine that was defined? If that's the only thing that you're going to listen to, well, maybe it was 18 something. It's later than that, but maybe it was 18 something. And then he says, well, then what's the point in having a pope? So at this point, the discussion is on the nature of the papacy. What is the purpose of the papacy?
Let's hear that clip. Let's hear that clip.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And opposite of what I think the Bible teaches.
And
I wouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd be like, no, I'm actually not part of this. I'm leaving.
But today you're part of the United States, but the head of the United States is
yeah,
one
but
of
I
the worst
don't.
presidents we
Again,
ever had.
I don't think
But you don't leave the country.
I don't take.
That's your country.
I don't take religious orders from Joe Biden.
No, but you take political orders, or you at least follow
Not
the law.
really. I mean, I follow the law, but I certainly don't political orders from Joe Biden.
No, I guess it would mean
like we all rebel against corrupt institutions we don't like.
But an unjust law is no law at all. It's not. It's a species
okay, an
of
unjust
violence rather
pope
than
is
law.
not a pope.
Yeah, but what's on?
I just got to say, again, having a pope does not mean that it's the Pope's church. Okay, the Catholic Church is the Church of Jesus Christ. He is the head. Okay, that's it. A vicar of Christ is not Christ. He's just supposed to represent them in an imperfect form because he's a human being. Okay,
right.
So this is not Pope Francis' church.
This is where it actually comes in handy to understand something like with regard to the time of King Richard and his brother Prince John. Okay, during the time of Robin Hood, King Richard was out fighting the Crusades, so he wasn't actually in England to rule England. He put his brother Prince John in charge. Prince John was not the king, but he was, in effect, he was effectively the ruler of England while King Richard was out fighting in the Crusades.
Vicar of Richard.
That's right. So who's in charge? Richard. Who is the administrator? Who is and what is his role, and what's the scope of his authority? Well, it's the same as Richard's, except that he cannot contradict that which England is. It's not he can tax his people, which he did. He can be oppressive, which he was. He can even suppress their freedom of speech, which he did. This all happened under Prince John. It was unjust, and it was also undone when Richard came back. So you have to understand that the role of the papacy is to administrate the church, to preserve the doctrine of the faith, to maintain that which was handed down to him. He is the guardian of the traditions of the church, not the innovator of new traditions, not the arbiter of new truths, which is what Pope Francis seems to be doing, or at least attempting to do, but he's not doing it in fact. He's doing it in effect, but not in fact. So there's a real there's a real deeper conversation that has to be had that Charlie's not allowing to have, because he's getting his zingers in rather than getting into the depth of the nature of the papacy.
He makes a solid point at the end, a solid attack on the Catholic position. Let's continue playing.
There's nothing unjust about the Pope talking about like climate change.
No,
you just don't pay attention to it. You know.
Okay, so you just like you pick and choose what it's like a buffet line.
No,
like I like what he says about this, but not about that. But yes, he is the inheritor of Saint Peter.
No. I mean,
like
the papal authority is that he speaks infallibly when speaking ex cathedra on faith and morals. It doesn't talk about climate change at all. So the Pope can say things that are crazy.
Yeah, so this is perfect. Then why have one?
Because,
if what he says
in order to speak infallibly ex cathedra on faith and morals.
Okay, so that has not happened since what? Vatican II?
No, it's a little bit.
When was the last time the Pope
well,
spoke
the
ex
Vatican
cathedra?
II is part of the magisterium.
When was the last time? Like 50, 60 years?
The last probably ex cathedra infallible teachings from a Pope were probably Pope Pius IX, like 150 years ago.
Okay, so then therefore there really is no functional use for a Pope for 150 years.
No, he's the leader of the church. He's the
exactly
he's the
your figurehead, your top leader is not good.
No, I don't know, but none is good but God, I guess.
Well, no, I would say Pope John Paul II was objectively a good person.
Wouldn't you would say none is good but God? That's what our Lord tells us.
Well, of course, yeah, we all fall short of the glory of God, but
so there you are.
I think that there is Catholic moral teaching will tell you that there are gradations of sin.
Yeah.
I'm using your own morality, and I agree with it, right? That like
there's venial sin.
Pope John Paul II is totally different than Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, but I don't know what sin are you accusing Pope Francis? I can't believe I'm defending Pope Francis.
What sin? How about the sin of like heresy of the Word of God, like believing in
heresy?
Okay, without getting into like the specific things that he said, but like in the Latin, the climate change stuff is insane. Way too relaxed. Way too relaxed on the homosexuality stuff.
He says God can't bless sin.
Well,
he says that he called gay marriage.
Don't go there, Michael. Don't go there.
If I had the
full
full body of work in front of me, what his teachings on communism are insane. He comes from liberation theology.
He says he's not a communist.
No.
He said it. He said he's not a communist.
Okay. So wait.
So does Obama.
Hold on. I want to. So Michael, let me say this. If I had every quote here, which of course I don't, you would be able to defend them that he said?
I would at least be able to make the point that he's not speaking infallibly, I think. But I wouldn't defend every report.
We'll get to the next question.
Yeah.
So that was a fantastic discussion that happened. I'm glad, again, both of them had that debate. And, I think, what would you say, Michael? This is key. If the last infallible statement was 1950, is it fair to say that the last time in church history that we have really needed a pope, any kind of use for the pope, was in 1950?
No, because the pope also, now in speaking infallibly, we're talking about establishing dogma. That's what Michael is talking about. But there are certain things that the Pope has also done, like with Humani Vitae or Evangelium Vitae, where he used the strongest language in condemning the use of contraception. And in fact, Pope, I think it was Paul VI that said, I decree by the authority of my office that this is intrinsically evil. So you have the Pope addressing certain moral issues of the day and using the authority of his office, and by using his authority, what he's doing is he's reaching into the treasury of the church's deposit of faith, and he's saying this is what the church has always taught, this is what the church has always believed, and based upon the body of the church's disposition for the last X number of years, well, all of that, with the authority given to me to establish that this is the deposit of the faith, now we can say that yes, the church has always taught, does teach, and will always teach that abortion is intrinsically evil, that contraception is intrinsically evil and can never be performed in any way, shape, or form for any reason. So That's why you have a pope, not just because he can declare dogmatic truth from time to time.
Yeah, but do you have to Charlie's point, can you be buffet style with everything that's not ex cathedra, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's can you do that? So if Pope Pius makes a or Pope Paul VI, or he did a encyclical Ecclesiam Suum, or John Paul II writes one, Evangelium Vitae, right?
Right.
Can you ignore it? Can you go buffet style with that? Since there's no from the chair statements from that.
Okay, so when a pope comes out with a new document, you have to give it due regard. Okay, you have to give it the due respect that is owed to it
because it's part of his ordinary magisterium, right?
Exactly.
That's the.
But that doesn't mean that you have to give it full assent at all times when it goes outside the boundaries of faith and morals.
Key point.
Okay. Yeah. So when we're talking about things like climate change, or you're talking about things like, I mean, the death penalty has it touches on faith and morals. It touches on morals anyway, but it's already been established. So one of the things that we know, the Pope can't contradict that which has already been established. It would be like the Pope coming out and saying, you know what, the rosary now is intrinsically evil. You can't do it. That would condemn everybody in history leading up to this point. You can't do that. The Pope doesn't have the authority to do that.
Even if the Pope says, by the way, even if he says ex cathedra from the chair, that Mary was not assumed into heaven, he says that.
Right.
That would not be an infallible statement, because the infallibility does not mean you can say whatever the heck you want as Pope on faith and morals.
Right.
You say it in a formal way, very specific
formula.
Grammatical structure of the words, right? But it's got to be in sync with 2,000 years of Catholic tradition, what other Catholic bishops have said, and what the faithful have always believed everywhere and always. And it has to be based ultimately in sacred scripture, right? So without those things, it ain't an ex-cathedra statement. I don't care if he's sitting on the darn chair or not, right?
Tradition is the one thing that should make Democrats and liberals happy, because it's the one time where the dead get to vote.
Well said.
Here's the thing. The history and the deposit of the faith given to us by all of our predecessors, starting with Christ, every successor of the apostles, this is the deposit of the faith. And through consensus of all of the bishops in each era, we do have what we call the deposit of faith. It's the treasury of the faith. Through that, we come to understand what the church has always taught, what the church is teaching. And when there's a question that arises, the role of the papacy is to give that definitive answer, to say, as we've examined this question, and there's a dubia in society, people are confused or concerned about a particular matter, whether it's abortion or euthanasia or homosexuality, whatever it is, there's a question about it. And so the Pope has the authority to say, here's the answer. This is the direction that has to be taken, because this is what the church teaches and has always taught. He cannot go against what the church has taught before, because that contradicts the deposit of the faith. And he cannot invent a new doctrine whole cloth. So you can't make a doctrine on climate change, and you can't establish that the death penalty is intrinsically evil, because the church has already, in a respect, permitted it and practiced it through her own institutions. So you can't condemn those who have already been exonerated by their actions.
So well said. I mean, Pope Francis, what he has done, even just, I think for the benefit of catechetics, hear me out, is it's forced us to better understand what papal infallibility is. Right. And it's forced all of us to have these kind of conversations. Yes, it's done a lot of damage. He's caused great scandal, even through his protection of all the sexual predators, right? Going back to McCarrick, right? Promoting people like McElroy, right? But at least this part, it's allowed us to better understand this because it has to be said. We Catholics, if you're listening to the show, you got to be speaking up because you have prominent people like Charlie Kirk, who's a phenomenal dude. He's done so much for God and for country here in the U.S. You know, we got to speak up to this, right? So kudos to both of them for speaking up. We're kind of hitting the end of our show. I mean, do you have some final thoughts here, Michael, about this whole thing and where we're going?
No, I think that it's important for us to understand papal infallibility and the role of the papacy because it's going to help us navigate these troubled waters that we're in. When it comes to McElroy or when it comes to how to handle Donald Trump and the church's reaction to the things going on in the political world, you have to know what the role of the Pope is and what his scope of authority is. He doesn't have the ability to go into your house and tell your family that you have to do X, Y, or Z within the rules and confines of your own family. He can't tell you that you can't spank your kids. He can't tell you that you can't tell your kids to come home by dusk. You know, he doesn't have that authority. So he can't micromanage the church. He can't micromanage the family. He has an authority, but the authority ends at a certain point. We have to understand those boundaries. And by understanding that, we're going to have a better understanding as to how the church plays in the world, especially with this highly politically charged climate that we're living in. So get to know the role of the church, the role of the papacy, and understand those boundaries.
Absolutely essential. Could be one of your New Year's resolutions heading here into 2025. Speaking of 2025, got to throw out there, shout out to our latest merch item, which out of everything we've done here at C4C, it is the most amazing. It's sold the most. It's the new 2025 Catholic Patriotic Calendar, which my co-host helped with the project as well. And it basically combines the traditional Latin Mass days, as well as Novus Ordo, along with the key dates in American history. And we took some of the different Catholic heroes, icons throughout our 250 years of history, from Charles Carroll to Elizabeth Van Seton, from Fulton Sheen, from Father Peyton to General Helen Moore from the Vietnam War. Good Catholic, right? So we put them on different every single month, and you can kind of really use this Catholic Patriotic Calendar as a way just to stay in line with your faith and your love of your country, and syncs it so well. So check it out here in the description. Highly recommend it. Get it for your friends, family, you name it. And I think we still have free shipping this month, so it's a total win. But it's a big year, 2025. We're 2 weeks from the inauguration. As I said, we will be there in person on the day covering the events. I think our Catholic Champion Show will be the day right afterwards. So we'll have a lot to share from firsthand witness of history being made, the greatest political comeback in U.S. history. And I'll close with one thing that Charlie said. He said, we just have to bring everyone, because one of his points was, he had a hard time with Mary. But he said, we just have to bring people to the cross. Bring people to the cross. Mm-hmm. And Charlie, I would agree with you there. We got to bring people to the cross. But Charlie, don't forget one thing. Who was at the cross? Was Mary. Okay? Mm-hmm. She was at the cross. If you're going to go to the cross, let's go there. We need to be there. So it's going to sustain us. But another human being there will be our Blessed Mothers at the foot of the cross, giving courage to those who have the guts to stand at the foot of the cross like St. John did. Let's pray to our Mary. It's why we call this show Catholic Champion, after Our Lady of Champion in Wisconsin, where she appeared. Ask for her maternal protection upon all of our families, for Archbishop Gustavo, for Cardinal McElroy, for President Trump, all of our friends and enemies, because our goal is that everyone will reach the final goal of heaven. This is Catholic Champion Show. We will see you same time, same place next week. God bless.